against an aggressive deck, and we beat that. So the deck's very flexible. I'm not saying it's unbeatable. No, absolutely it's beatable. If they have like a draw that's, more bolts than we can deal with and we can't stick a tutor, absolutely. They just have to keep you off the tutors. And a benefit of being black Tron versus the other Tron we were just playing is you get more tutor creatures. You have more tutor creatures, yeah. We could get a little more toolboxy. That doesn't make us necessarily more consistent, but it also means it's harder for the opponent to keep us off the tutor if you're in black. Blight Speaker is the other tutor, and it's only in black. Did I say that running black in this deck could be nice? I think I did. I think you guys got that. Cut the Pauper. Cut this card. I mean, I'd have to cut a lot of the things that are cute. We have to shave it back down to the bare minimum. So what's the bare minimum? These, right? I love having redundancy on the tutors. It's really important. Rebel seems weak to getting tempoed out, but could be very solid in other matchups. Right. I think that'll be our hardest match, Harpoon. Strand is nice against burn. Tutorable children will make burn players cry. Oh, I don't know if we're going to run children. But you could. This is interesting to me, though. I mean, like, we're basically melding both of the decks we were playing earlier today. We melded, we're melding, hang on, let me change the stream tile. We're totally, no offense to Lumberjack, we're totally going off on this, Pauper Rebellion. I don't know if that's what we're going to call it, but I'll come up with something better eventually. That's usually what happens. We like have an initial name for a deck or something, and then we go back and we're like, man, that name sucked, and we fix it. So it's not set in stone. It's certainly not set in stone. Also, being in black gives us access to duress, which is like basically the only hand hate spell that gets played. Let's try to stay away from the black-black interactions. For example, I think that the this changeling will be very inefficient, even though it has had a common printing. I think it'll be, or maybe it didn't. No, it did. We just don't own it yet. I think that this will be, albeit if we even had like 2 or 3 black sources, this would still be pretty underwhelming. So I think this is going to get cut. We should run this much bodyguard. That's a pet card of mine. Pet card. Maybe consider these. These are just basically weaker trappers, though. So I think the only black changelings I'm interested in is the one that can block forever, which is the regenerating one, well, as long as we can pay for it, and the one that has Death Touch as another removal spell in addition to the playset of Bound in Silence if we want it. Sneaky, sneaky, put it in play, give it Death Touch, block, kill something. I think the Tron makes everything so much less consistent, though. Oh, me too, me too. I think it's an interesting subject for brewing, to see how far we can stretch the deck before we ruin it. Yeah, I'm not saying we're making this thing better. I would argue that we're making it worse. We'll be like, wow, the mono white version is just solid, and go back to that. That is a perfectly reasonable conclusion. Maybe a 1-1 split of the trappers. And then maybe, like we were doing in the other one, a 3-1 split of Bound and Silence. Because not every match, believe it or not, most of the matches you're going to play in Pauper do involve creatures. There's no planeswalkers. There's no, you're just not going to play against that. So, the 4th Bound and Silence might be useful. Most decks in Pauper will try to end the game with creatures and hitting you in the face. There's a couple exceptions. One would be the Teachings Control type decks, where they mill you out and just answer all your creatures. Yeah. think sometimes Tron is bad more often than Tron is good, though, says Amp. Right, if we were going to splash any color, I think it is black because we get a lot more tools, we get more tutors. So in essence, we could wean ourselves off the benevolent bodyguards by just having more tutors. By having more tutors, more tutor creatures, excuse me, to be specific, it means we could like do like a split of duresses, like one main deck, two side or something. Yeah, I mean we also get hand hate. Like we're getting something out of the splash, certainly. The detriment is it's going to affect the mana. I haven't even begun to fix it, so. So what tools do we want? The Embolden isn't going to get run in the final version anyway. I'm not sure about those. Do you even need the additional Trapper? Maybe just one Bear. Maybe you main deck a Sunlance. Even if, I mean, you might end up playing against somebody that's playing white. It's okay, you just side it out. It's not a huge detriment. It sucks a little bit, but it's quick. It's much, much faster than the Bounded Silences, so it might be nice to have a split of these in the main deck. You only need 1/2 to get everything going, fading removal. Well, right. But one of the reasons, Harpoon, that I was running the protection creatures in the other version was because I missed... The first version that I was playing, the first one that I brewed, Harpoon, was the black variant, was just white-black, no Tron. This is going to be much, much greedier. But basically, I noticed that I wasn't having trouble sticking a tutor because we just run so many. If you're going to splash black, you have this many. That many. You have 20. A third of the deck. A third. Now, albeit, there's only one Ramosin, and that's our weakness. I'll admit it. That's our weakness. There is only one Ramosin Sergeant, so that's the benefit of having the benevolent bodyguards, is that you can stick and protect the Sergeant. Because she is... What is she? She's... And you can still sideboard the specific stuff. Like, what she is to the deck is... Like, she's so much different than these other 16. These other 16 tutors are all 4s, right? 4 activation, 4 activation, 4... Albeit, they do other things, right? This is a drainer. This one is 2 power. This one is a flyer. And this one is 1/2. More defensive. You know, they have different sized bodies or abilities than her, but the fact that she can activate on 3 is huge. Wall of Nin? Wall of Nin. Wall of Nim? I mean, that's a reason to still run some number of Benevolent. It's like a one-time Other of Runes use. It's nothing super special. If you want something more permanent, you need Acolyte. Unless you want a main deck. There's plenty of red removal. In fact, red removal is pretty popular. Red removal, red removal, red. The other popular form of removal is black. The black Acolyte is actually a lot more expensive than crimson. Any chance you might cut a few tutors in the end? Yeah, if I was to cut a tutor, it probably would be the Drainer. Harpoon. No nameless inversion. It doesn't work like you want it to, Heim. Because this says permanent. I thought it worked too, Harpoon. Whale, sorry for caps. Oh, Whale of the Nim? Whale of Nim? It doesn't work like you want it to. So this says permanent card. Those are spells. I thought the same thing. Regenerate or deals 1 to each creature and player. Ooh, that's flexible. Ooh. Huh. That is really flexible. I like that. Maybe enough for a 2 of. Huh. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, you don't need the bodyguards. I mean, like, you could do like a 2-2 split of bodyguard. Or, again, you could just have a plethora of tutors and just ignore the bodyguard. Like, there's a couple different ways you could handle the black variant. I think the white variant is indeed going to still want bodyguard. I think that this black version can get away with not running any bodyguards. It's not a very strong card. It's not. I'm not very impressed with it. I think it's a necessity if you're not in black and you don't have the extra 4 tutors. I think you need to protect them. Like, as they are the deck. This is the deck, if you're wondering. This is the deck. Yes, these are all things we can tutor, and that's great. And they all have different implications. You know, you've got... And maybe you want to sideboard a Rift Watcher. You could do that. You could stretch the deck further and sideboard 1 Bound and 1 Rift Watcher. It means we have a worse burn match, but you could do that. Depends on who you want to beat. You can do a 3-3 split, and then these are all singletons. So a Death Toucher, a Shadow Pinger, a Regenerator, and a Tapper. So those are the real Spice tutor targets, right? And then in post-board, we have a few more Spice tutor targets. You've got, not Shepherd, we're not going to run Shepherd. Acolyte is powerful, even though you can't tutor for her. So you got, this is a tutorable, this is a tutorable, extra Tapper, extra Rift Watcher, extra, yeah. And then the other card would be what? I'm pretty sure we're not using any of these, so why don't we just go ahead and cut them. That'll make it easier for me to switch back and forth between the brews. So let's go back to the other one and port over some of the tech that we have. Or actually, I can just pull it up. We made a screenshot, right? I can make screenshots of both versions. So we got a mono white version that we're trying to port this over from. When will the Regenerator be better than the Tapper? That's a good question. Bogles? But then again, Harpooner, you'd probably still just rather have the Tapper, right? So this one was running Crushers. So what are some of the cards from here we want to port over to the mono black variant? I was only running 2 bodyguards, actually, in this one. We were getting away with it. Let's just screenshot it. It'll be easier for me to tab between the two. Just moto problems. It's really not the best place to build a deck, but it's certainly where all the cards are held. Okay, so let's go here. Okay, so... Now, the white stuff have a real cost. The Dust to Dust, very powerful, but will we afford it in this one? We're not going to run these, the Cycle Lands. Alright. So... Still, it's a very powerful sideboard card, and I'd be interested in still running it despite its cost. I mean, so we're at 15 land, and we have 7 more cards, so the rest just have to be lands, and then some. You're right, we'll probably use the Tapper more than we would use a Regenerator. I agree with that. So let's go ahead and cut that one. What about the Changeling, the Death Toucher? Is that relevant, or... I guess we don't even need this, right? Because if it was hexproof, we could still use Bound and Silence because of how the wording works, so I guess you don't need that either. So really the only black that we're interested in the main deck are just the extra tutors and the Tapper, right? So actually none of the Changelings even make the cut, do they? Because you're right, the Tapper's just more useful for all the situations we just described. Harpoon, you're spot on, my friend. You are spot on. Yeah. I don't see the point to the Changelings at all. That's disappointing. I was kind of excited by that notion, but I think you're right. I think the Trapper's just stronger. And it's the same amount of mana investment, too. I mean, like, the other guy was, what? The Regenerator cost us 2 mana. The Death Toucher costs us 2. Unless you want, like, a combat trick, that's the only reason you'd want the Death Toucher over the Trapper, unless you want to get him. Trapper's something that they notice. Unless you want to... I gotcha! You don't need the Death Toucher. We might bring that one back, though, because of the I gotcha. Maybe they'll overcommit. I'm going to put that in the baby pile, Death Touch. But you're right. Certainly the Trapper beats out the Regenerator, right? Yeah. But we may want this. We may want the second Dust, even though it's greedy. Theradar, thanks for the follow, Reno. Welcome to the show. Harpoon says I'm going to hit the gather to make sure we're not missing anything. Heimer says just run more tappers, it's fine. Yeah, they're more flexible than the Bound in Silence. I think a split is good. What about a 2-3 split? Why don't we just go ahead and put the other tapper in the main? Trapper, yeah. Why don't we just go ahead and put the second trapper in the main?